Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy to have former Georgia All-American and our Dog Nation analyst, John Stinchcomb, with us as well. And, you know, John, in a normal circumstance, maybe a normal year, you and I would be together inside the friendly confines of the Dog Nation World Headquarters Studios. If we can't really do that right now because we're still respecting social distancing and things along those lines, then why not take advantage of a beautiful fall day? And it is stunningly gorgeous here on this Thursday, heading into Georgia and Auburn. A little weird to have that game coming up on the second week of the season, right at the beginning of October. But nonetheless, we are certainly enjoying the move towards that game with what has been absolutely perfect fall weather here this week. So thanks for being with us on the Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. And by the way, this is great weather to be out on a back deck or a patio and enjoying some Classic City Lager as well. So, John, it's good to see you again this afternoon.
Good to see you, too. I'd hate to pan down and wonder if you actually have a Classic City Lager right off screen right now, because the setting that you're in looks perfect.
Yeah, I'll never tell one way or another on that. But one of the things we will be telling is a lot about what's going to happen for Georgia and Auburn as we head towards the upcoming weekend, a very interesting game. And I think, John, we're in a situation where the results of Arkansas, for both the good and the bad, I think lead into some big questions that must be asked against the Tigers, especially if Georgia's going to find a way to come out victorious here in that game. So we'll work through some of these. We'll take folks' comments live on both Facebook and YouTube. When we're done, though, before we're done, your old teammate Terrence Edwards told a story about you today on Dog Nation Daily, and so I'm going to have to get a response from you about that before we're done. It involves one of the great Georgia-Auburn games of the past. So we'll be very busy and do a lot here this afternoon on the Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Let me begin with this. John, I think one of the huge questions facing Georgia on Saturday is beyond just which quarterback starts in this game, because I think multiple quarterbacks will play no matter what. I think what it comes down to is how many of those quarterbacks will play. And when is it that they do play? Is it two? Dwan Mathis has been like it was a week ago. Is it now JT Daniels inserted as a third into that discussion? That becomes a huge storyline for this game coming up on Saturday. And it's a way of kind of previewing our conversation about that right now. Let you hear Kirby Smart addressing that quarterback situation a little earlier this week. This is Smart with the media. Take a listen to this.
A lot more important how we play around him and how we support him, because whoever is able to do that the best and get the most out of the people around them is probably going to be the guy that moves the ball and produces. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. If that's one guy, if that's two guys, we're not putting ourselves in a pigeonhole and saying we can only have one quarterback. We've got to develop all our quarterbacks. So I know y'all are looking at it in terms of Auburn right now, who's going to play, what's the quarterback, where we're trying to look at our entire roster and say, okay, how are we going to be the best we can be in week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down the line? Because there's some guys on.
All right, so Kirby Smart, obviously you want to keep the cards close to the vest when it comes to the quarterback situation. And obviously you can check out Kirby Smart on the Dog Nation YouTube page to see everything he had to say about that this week. So, John, let me turn to you with the question we mentioned a moment ago. You know, how do you think this plays out? How many of these quarterbacks do you expect to see coming up on Saturday, and which ones of that group do you think will play?
Well, having seen the clip and knowing what Kirby said originally, he's playing his cards close to the vest, and rightfully so. You don't want to give Auburn any advantage as to how to prepare. You're preparing for the athleticism, dual threat aspect that you know Dwan is capable of, or more of a pocket presence and reactionary from whether JT or Stetson. And looking at it from last week, obviously Dwan didn't have that first half that anyone was hoping for. But Kirby was quick to say the supporting staff wasn't there around him. Now, in contrast, Stetson Bennett, if you're making the case for him, he comes in and the offense was obviously, visibly improved. They were clicking better. There was opportunities that presented, and he was quick and decisive. So if you're trying to make the case for him getting more reps, I think you can say, what more do you expect from him given the opportunity? I think he made a very strong case to say, I want the ball. I may not have the stats. I may not be the five-star guy. I didn't come in with the herald name that really Jamie Newman and JT Daniels, even DeJuan has, but he performed really well. And, the third name is JT Daniels, a guy that he came here for a reason. He wants to play and was immediately eligible. So I don't think he wants to sit and watch the battle play out between DeJuan and Stetson. He wants to be a part of the action, and you have a little bit of a three-headed monster. Does that answer your question at all? No, Brandon, it doesn't. You asked me who do I think is going to play. So if I'm forced to the fire, I think I would expect Stetson Bennett to be the number one guy. I think he's the first guy you rolled out there. I think he's earned that opportunity based on his performance. And I fully expect to see DeJuan Mathis come into the picture. I don't know yet about JT Daniels. I don't know about, even though he's cleared, does he have the confidence in the injury? And where is he at mentally more than physically? I had a little bit of a discussion today with a rabid, avid Dog Nation fan, Jody, at the Sugarloaf Rotary Club this afternoon, and was asking the same question. So I know it's across the board. Folks want to know, who are we going to see? But ultimately what we want to see is production. And whoever that guy is that gets his number called, when he comes in the game, we as Georgia fans, we want to see some production. We want to see him move the ball down the field and come away with points.
So Ken Feinberg, watching us on Facebook right now, says that he hopes only one of these quarterbacks plays on Saturday. And, John, I understand where that comes from. It's the old adage that when you've got more than one quarterback, you don't actually have any quarterbacks. That's been a cliche about as long as you and I both have been alive on that front. However, when it comes to Georgia in particular this Saturday, I don't quite think this team is there yet on that front. Let's put JT Daniels aside for a moment, because I want to get more thoughts from you on Daniels in just a bit. If we assume that what Georgia is dealing with the quarterback situation is similar to what it had a week ago, obviously we saw Stetson Bennett come in and really act as the closer for Georgia after some DeJuan Mathis struggles in the first half that Kirby Smart was very clear to point out were not all the blame of Mathis. And I think it's fair and wise for Smart to say it that way. But Georgia needed Stetson Bennett this past Saturday. However, I could see the opposite also being true this upcoming week, that if you do give the nod to Bennett as the starter, and based on the way that he played against Arkansas, it would be easy to understand why you might. If you do give the nod to him in that regard, DeJuan Mathis still brings a great deal of athleticism to the table. That must be game planned against. In addition to being a very good runner, DeJuan Mathis also has a cannon for an arm. If you want to uncork the ball 50, 60 yards down the field, and against Auburn at some point in time you might want to do that, Mathis may very well be, in comparison to Bennett, the best option to do that there as well. There's a lot that Bennett's really, really good at, but there are a couple of physical aspects that Mathis brings to the table that maybe no one else in this Georgia roster can match right now. So with respect to Ken's comment about wanting to see Georgia settle on one quarterback, eventually I think that's the recipe for how you win a national championship. But unless JT Daniels is really, truly healthy and really, really ready to go out there and play, I still feel like it's a combination of maybe it's a lot of Bennett and a little bit of Mathis, but in some form or fashion, a bit of Bennett, a bit of Mathis, that's probably the recipe for how Georgia gets this done coming up on Saturday.
This is speculation here, BA, but here's what I would anticipate is whoever that quarterback that starts the game, I expect there to be at least 3 or 4 series of an opportunity to get some sort of rhythm. I don't expect there to be an every other series rotation. I don't think that breeds continuity. I do think after 3 or 4 series, it's good to create some switch up when there's not a clear, definitive number one, which is very much the case right now. I think I already have a little bit made a case for each of the guys to get their reps, mainly because nobody has jumped out there and been the head and shoulders clear number one. I think Stetson obviously had a better performance, but that doesn't negate the fact that throughout all of training camp, DeJuan Mathis is the one who the coaches and players got behind and said, this is the guy we're starting the season with. So that doesn't get washed away off of one ineffective half, that the burden of that performance is shared between the other 10 guys that took the field with DeJuan. So it's not, I don't expect to see an every other series rotation, but I do think that you're going to see more than one guy come into the game. I would say even within the first half, Sometimes it brings a spark. You just want to make sure that there's continuity and a flow that doesn't get lost with it being so every other series type situation.
Can we talk a little bit more about JT Daniels before we change the subject and address another topic here? I don't have any idea how healthy he truly is. I have a tendency, and this is probably just a part of my sort of warped mind, but when Smart starts the week announcing, hey, he's cleared to play, there's a part of me that goes immediately to, oh, this is some sort of gamesmanship on the part of Smart, because if he really was truly healthy and about to be a big factor in this game, Smart wouldn't be revealing that right off the top to begin a week during a press conference. I am perhaps overthinking that. There's actually a very good chance that I'm overthinking that at least a little bit. I guess my hunch is, and maybe this is me just trying not to get my hopes up too much, because I do think that Daniels can be a very potent quarterback for Georgia. My hunch is that JT Daniels in some form or fashion is not still a huge part of this game plan on Saturday. If that ends up being wrong, I'll be pleasantly surprised by the results. But for me, it still feels like more of a Mathis, more of a Bennett type day because of just how uncertain the health situation has been for Daniels leading into this game on Saturday.
Well, we're trying to speak into a situation that we don't have a lot of knowledge of, in that how has JT Daniels performed in practice day in and day out? Has he exhibited the traits that we expect with a quarterback of his caliber, what we've seen on the field early in his career at USC and his ability to throw the ball? How confident does he look? What's his mastery of the offense at this point? We've got no idea. It's based solely on the potential, and his potential is vast. I mean, he's a talented guy that you watch some of his highlight reels and you go, I'm fired up that he's wearing red and black. So that's more of a long-term answer to a short-term question. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what has he done in practice up to this point that says, okay, obviously it has to be cleared first, but he's shown everything to the coaches and his teammates for them to be confident that he can go out there and beat a bitter rival. I mean, this isn't a throwaway game. Nobody in red and black ever likes to lose to anyone in orange and blue, and Auburn is at the head of that list. So there is a lot left to be answered before anyone can say it's JT's job, just based off last week's performance of the other two quarterbacks, or his pedigree and his record coming in onto campus at the first time.
Last thing on this topic, I want you to address something that Lloyd Dog says on YouTube, where he says, listen, if Stetson Bennett comes in and leads some scoring drives, he'd like to see him stay in the game. And, John, I think what Lloyd and other Georgia fans who feel a similar way about that, I think what they're kind of getting to here is there was some confidence gained by fans for Bennett with the way that he played last week. I think Georgia needed him to win the game. I'm not sure they actually win that game if Bennett doesn't play the way that he did. And comments like the one you just saw there from Lloyd, probably the perfect example of that. They saw him lead scoring drives last week, and at least this upcoming week, I think there's some belief that Bennett can do that again.
Yes, I mean, I have confidence in him, and I think more importantly, he has confidence in himself. You watch the way he took the field. It wasn't a passive backup quarterback mentality. He wasn't throwing checkdowns. There were some tight windows where he made quick decisions and fired the ball in there. He took a little bit of a shot with George Pickens down the sideline, which was a little bit questionable or a little underthrown, one of the two, but didn't come in playing with scared money. I mean, the guy just oozes confidence. You see how he runs the ball once he decides to tuck it and take off. He's doing it with some vindication. I mean, he's meaning what he's doing with every action that he takes. So he plays with confidence. I think that comes with experience. I think his JUCO experience was really showing through. He also had the courage to leave a program like Georgia to go take the field, something that Dwan hasn't had access to. He hasn't had those live reps outside of college over a year of football ago. So there's going to be some growing pains, and I think we witnessed that, but that doesn't negate the fact that Dwan Mathis is still a very talented quarterback who, again, won the starting job in the minds of the coaches and had the backing of his teammates.
This is the Dog Nation Happy Hour poured by Classic City Lager. My name's Brandon Adams. It's good to have the former UGA All-American and Dog Nation analyst John Stinchcomb with us as well. And as I said before, what a great thrill it is to be telling you about Classic City Lager right now. You know, it's an Athens original from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing. That means when you're there in downtown Athens, it's a big part of the city landscape. They're great, you know, residents, members of that community, both taking care of folks who love drinking good cold beer, but also taking care of a lot of folks in the community who maybe, you know, need a little extra assistance, things like that. In fact, we're going to have a great interview coming up this Sunday at the dognation.com and on the Dog Nation video channels, where we tell you a little bit more about some of the great work that our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing and Classic City Lager are doing there in the community of Athens. But I'll also tell you this, as we head towards a weekend where many of you want to be, just like I am right now, outside enjoying some sunshine, watching some college football, either in Athens or anywhere that a Dog Nation stretches here, Classic City Lager, a great choice for you on that. And the great news is, even though it's an Athens original, you don't have to be in Athens to get it. Whichever retailer you love to go to, you can get those 6 and 12-pack cans of Classic City Lager all year round. This is a year-round beer from our friends at Creature Comforts. It's good cold beer. In fact, you can learn more about it by checking out the hashtag Good Cold Beer. It's easy drinking. It's crisp flavor. It goes great on a day like this or any college football Saturday heading towards the upcoming season. So make sure you check out some Classic City Lager from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing. It is truly good cold beer. We appreciate them pouring out the Dog Nation happy hour here today. All right, John, after some happy talk about some good cold beer, let me move on to maybe a little bit more of a serious topic here for a moment, and that's the current state of the Georgia offensive line. Kirby Smart kind of pushed back on the notion on Tuesday of the potential angst formed by Trey Hill subbing out at center, Warren Erickson coming in for him, Warren McClendon coming in at right tackle, Owen Condon taking a backseat, at least for part of the game, to McClendon. You know, Kirby Smart not making too much of that, saying that these evaluations have been going on a long time before the season actually began. In fact, John, before I let you weigh in on the situation of the Georgia offensive line, let me let Dog fans hear a little bit from Kirby talking about some of those position shifts that we saw. This is what Kirby had to say about that.
Well, those battles will continue all year. To be honest with you, if we didn't think they were the best players, they probably wouldn't have been there in the first place, right? So there's 25 plays, 25 practices. It's a body of work. And I think a lot of times people think you're going to magically fix it with a change. You got to get your players to play better. And where you have an opportunity to make a change or you've got a competitive battle, you certainly got to use it that way. And Warren McClendon and Owen continue to work at right tackle. They both played in the game. And that was really the first real game action. When I say real, you know, Warren got to play some in the past, but Owen and Warren both getting in their first real game action. They're going to grow and get better.
John, for me, I can split my offensive line concerns, I should say, in half. Right tackle being a little bit of a work in progress, a little bit of an ongoing competition. I believe I probably expected that to continue during the season. We just haven't seen a lot of actual in-game reps from McClendon or Owen Condon, who did get the start on Saturday. And you want to add certainly the incoming freshmen like, Broderick Jones and Tate Ratledge in that discussion. We just haven't seen in-game reps from them yet. I'm not surprised. That's not a settled conversation as of yet. A little more concerning, though, for me that Georgia felt the need to make a center swap during the game, moving Trey Hill over to guard. I don't have any doubt that Hill's one of Georgia's best 5 offensive linemen, but that quarterback center exchange is just so important. That's not the kind of thing that you can afford to have any lack of certainty about going into the game against Auburn, especially when Hill is supposed to be one of your bedrock offensive linemen. I know you and I spoke about this on Dog Nation Daily a little earlier this week, but what do you make of the current state of the Georgia offensive line?
Well, I like the fact that Warren Erickson has earned his way into the conversation in the interior. I think he was a guy that when he stepped in the Sugar Bowl, he showed that he was ready to be one of the 5 or 6 guys in the discussion. Obviously, the quarterback center exchange, that has to be cleaned up. You can't start any play without a clean snap. And there were times where they're reaching for balls, even the ones that weren't fumbled away or lost weren't exactly clean. So before any play can start, that has to be a non-issue. Any center will tell you that's a number one priority. So whether Trey Hill is more comfortable at center, which I thought he did an admirable job last year. He was in a number of discussions for preseason, postseason awards because of his play at offensive line wise and as a center. So he's got a spot on that offensive line. I think the question is whether you feel more comfortable with Warren as your center and letting Trey play guard? Is that more of a natural spot for him? Or is Trey, did he just have a little bit of a few off snaps? And Warren's a guy that you can rotate in at guard just because of his ability. Now, the right tackle position, I think we saw why it's not firm yet. You've got two younger guys that don't have the experience, not to mention you're replacing 2 first-round draft picks at both your edge positions, and no one has laid claim to that position yet. There were times where Condon, when he was in the game, he made some good plays, and then there were some times where you'd probably want it to be a little firmer at the top of the pocket. Same thing could be said for McClendon when he came in. He had some good plays, but there's a reason why I feel like that's a position battle as opposed to what you see in the interior, which is a rotation of guys that you have complete confidence in. I think those are 2 different scenarios.
Rock Fandango, watching us on YouTube, said, hey, Georgia's got a lot of elite recruits at that offensive line position. It's time now for them to step up. And, John, I understand where Rock is coming from on this. But the honest truth is that even though Georgia's line situation is a bit in flux right now, this is still a luxury that most college football teams would readily change places with Georgia on. I'm not sugarcoating this. The line's got to play better than it played last Saturday. But when you look at the ongoing competition at right tackle, these are recruits that other programs really wanted. Condon, McClendon, the 2 incoming freshmen especially. Once that position is settled, it'll be solidified by one of these elite recruits who earns his way there. The fact that when Georgia did have a little bit of a center issue, the fact that it had the luxury of bringing in a guy like Erickson to be the center, and you could move, Trey Hill to guard, displacing kind of a former 5-star in his own right, or at least a very highly rated recruit in Ben Cleveland. These are not the kinds of, offensive line personnel issues that most programs get a chance to sift their way through. Georgia's lucky on that. And to bring up Cleveland here for a moment, whether it's Erickson or Cleveland, one of the two, the super sub role for Georgia along this offensive line the llast couple of years has been crucial. Last year, they really had 2 of them. It was Salyer, who could play multiple positions. It was Cade Mays, who could play multiple positions. Those were the guys that you were kind of, moving in a couple of different spots. I don't know that right now you're certainly going to, use Erickson as probably an interior offensive lineman only. You may have a little bit more flexibility with Cleveland if he's in that spot. But when you're thinking about the offensive line spots for Georgia, for me, it goes beyond the 5 starters. There's also that 6th, 7th man, like you think of as a basketball rotation, because Georgia will have to play multiple guys. Offensive linemen just have a tendency to get hurt because of the physicality of the position. So you start thinking about whether it is Erickson or Cleveland that gets moved, outside that starting 5. That number 6 guy continues to be really important for Georgia.
And I think we have 6. I think you have 6 that are in that discussion, have earned that right. What's funny is because of the depth that you have on the interior, Schaefer, Cleveland, Trey Hill, Warren Erickson, I think that's why you see Jamari Salyer at left tackle. I don't think that's his natural spot. I just think he's a phenomenal offensive lineman, and he's versatile. He's an athlete. He was willing to kind of change his body shape a little bit this offseason to shift from an interior mauler space eater to a guy that's a little more athletic, going to face a little more athletic defensive ends than the interior guys that he would have seen otherwise. So it's because of his versatility that you've solidified that left side of the line. Now, the right tackle, it's not like Cade Mays and Warren Erickson and Jamari Salyer, was last year. That's still a position where you're trying to find who the starter is. It's not that you have 7 guys that are ready to play and there's no drop off. I think that's still a position competition where Condon and McClendon are battling it out and trying to lay claim to that starting spot and really solidify, I'm your guy at right tackle where you don't have to worry. I don't think it's one of those where either one comes in and you feel totally confident. They're still growing and learning on the job. It's on the job training at right tackle.
I want to move on to our third crucial question here. It's the Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. We're looking at those big questions facing Georgia as it gets ready to try to beat Auburn coming up on Saturday. And by the way, it's one of the crucial questions facing you might be, how do you make the most of your game day experience? Many of you home gating this year after tailgating's been the norm for years. Well, one of the great home gating pairings for you is whatever you're doing football-wise this weekend, putting some Classic City Lager with that. It's good cold beer. It's great tasting, crisp flavor, but it's also easy drinking as well. It's an Athens original from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing. So check out some classic city lager at whichever retailer you like to frequent. So John Leonard Young over here on the Facebook comment section says that his prediction on Saturday is Georgia wins 35-14. Now listen, I got the Georgia G on my shirt right here. I'm a very big Georgia fan. I don't know that Georgia can score 35 points in this game on Saturday, and I'm saying that as honestly as I know how to. So as we kind of look ahead to the offensive requirement for Georgia on Saturday, who are those playmakers that can that can sort of step up for Georgia to give them a chance to maximize the offense as much as they possibly can?
Well, let's first acknowledge that this team is going to rely heavily on the defense, especially early in the season, until the offense gains some identity, gains some confidence. When you're talking about the offensive line needing to improve, which offensive position group doesn't? Across the board, you can point to the play from the wide receivers, the running backs, obviously the quarterback, and the tight end, where there's opportunity to get better. I mean, that's what you get in week one, especially when you're relying on so many new faces. This is no exception. So obviously, if I'm looking at guys that should and could step up and make a huge difference on Saturday, I start with George Pickens. He is a difference maker. He's been labeled and identified as a guy who's arguably our best wide receiver since A.J. Green was in the red and black. And I think that's a fair comparison. So you start with your dynamic playmaker, and like we said, this entire offseason, who can step up around him? I think the tight ends showed that that's an improved group to me. I think there's a lot of talent there that can be a challenge for the defense and get some of those tougher downs, second and long, third and medium, where you're looking for a big body to, you throw to him at 5 and he ends up getting 8. Man, I think we got the guys now at that position. I also want to see some more game control from our running backs. I thought James Cook was given a number of opportunities to kind of show his playmaking ability, and at times looked okay with it, but didn't exactly enamor anyone. Who's that running back that you just go, when we need it, he's the one I'm turning to? I think Zeus continues to be a guy that he's going to break tackles. He's going to run hard. He's going to be an inspiring player. But you want to see that fifth gear, that takeover mentality where you go, he's not going to be denied. When he sees a hole, he's hitting it, and he's breaking plays.
Hey, I want to ask you bring up the names George Pickens for a moment. That's a guy that Terrence Edwards talked about this morning on Dog Nation Daily as well. I thought his touchdown on Saturday against Arkansas was really crucial and changed the momentum of that game. John, this is also an interesting game for Pickens because, Auburn was the school he was once committed to. Pickens, obviously an emotional player. I, for the most part, think the emotion that Pickens provides for Georgia is a good thing, but there'll be a lot of folks who remember Pickens from, Hoover High School there in Alabama, and a lot of Auburn fans certainly remember him flipping away from Auburn to Georgia, which puts a little bit of a target on his back for, a Saturday like this. How would you, kind of tell Pickens to make sure that he controls his emotions and make sure that he goes out there and does what he needs to do on the field without maybe having too much extracurricular stuff off the field?
Well, Pickens is a guy that, he plays with passion. I think we can all agree there. I think he's a year matured. I think there's opportunity for him to recognize having an entire offseason to look back, and you think back to the Georgia Tech game where things got that spirit rolled into an ejection. So that should come with a level of maturity, but without a regression in passion and spirit, because, man, I'm one of the guys that gets inspired when you look over and you see a teammate that's playing with such vigor and emotion like George approaches the game with on a week-in, week-out basis. Yep. It looks like Brandon's a little bit frozen, although he's in beautiful weather. So just keeping on with this offense. I think, you saw last week, you can't just rely on George Pickens. There's a number of receivers that have to step up. It was good to see a guy like Matt Landers, who's been in the program, contribute. I think he's a guy early on that probably gets more reps, mainly because he understands the importance of blocking at the second level. If you're going to play wide receiver at Georgia, you have to be willing to get your nose a little bit dirty in the run game to earn the opportunities for some of the pass routes. That's usually why at the beginning of the season, you see some more of your veteran, quote unquote, players rather than young guys. So, the Burtons of the world will have their opportunities, but they're going to be a little bit fewer and far between, mainly because you want somebody who can be on first down, second down, contributing to the offense. Georgia has always been a team that wants to, at the very least, be balanced. Otherwise, lean on their run game. And if you have wide receivers that aren't blocking, well, they're not going to be on the field. So I think that's also probably why you see Demetrius Robertson early in the game, or at least early in the season, more so than some of the younger guys.
So I think I may have checked out on you there for a minute, John. Thanks for carrying everything for me. I think I'm back with you now. You're hearing me okay right now, right?
I hear you. You're great.
All right, that's good. That's good to know. I'm glad to be back with all of you on that. I think John, this is obviously setting up to be an incredibly interesting game for Georgia, and one that's circled by every Georgia fan, and frankly on both sides. Each and every year. As someone who played in this rivalry, what does the Georgia-Auburn game mean to you?
For me, we were discussing it earlier. What's the rivalry that means the most to you? Obviously, I have a burr in my saddle because I went 0-4 against Florida. But I have more friends and family that are Auburn fans, which obviously makes it more important. And, it's one of those that don't tell anybody, but they were in one of the final schools that I was looking at. If I didn't want to, quote unquote, follow in the footsteps of my brother to Athens.
First of all, John, that's very hard for me to picture right there. That's one of those sort of shudder to the thought moments.
Don't picture it, BA. Yeah. Yeah, it worked out just the way it's supposed to. Isn't it funny? You see these recruits, they go on these visits and they're wearing the jerseys of all these teams, and you think, well, I'm gonna log that away from when we faced this team, and all of a sudden, flash back to when you're 17 years old in the locker room, with your gloves on, having a gator on your gloves, that kind of thing. So, I think we all fall into that trap of being the high school kid that looks at all your. It's not really a trap, BA, but looking at all your opportunities. But man, this rivalry is huge to me. I think it's obviously one of the oldest rivalries, and it's important to Georgia fans just because I think you have respect for the success that other programs had. Maybe not direct respect for that program, although they're not nearly as far removed from a national championship as we are. Hopefully, we can change that this coming year and for many years to come.
So I don't mean to embarrass you, but I do want to finish the story here today as part of our Dog Nation Happy Hour poured by Classic City Lager. So one of my great memories as a Georgia fan is the 2002 win against Auburn. And I'm a big believer that when you start cataloging the great wins in recent Georgia history, for whatever reason, this game, the great touchdown Michael Johnson scores, David Green, your good friend on fourth down, big play, big moment there to make all that happen. For whatever reason, we don't remember this quite as fondly as hobnail boot, things like that. I think part of this is Larry Munson just had a better call for the hobnail boot game, which makes it probably a little bit easier to remember. I was talking to Terrence Edwards about this morning on Dog Nation Daily. I had forgotten that Terrence didn't play in the game. Terrence was hurt. He said Damian Gary, the other receiver, a very good receiver, was hurt as well. That is something I had forgotten. But what Terrence had said is that in halftime of that game, Auburn does jump out 14-0. You guys came back from a deficit. And I'm not trying to embarrass you, but I do want to hear more about this. He said you told a great story. You challenged the team during the locker room. You really step up, spoke to the team. You're a modest guy. I'm sure you won't give us all the details. But would you mind just telling us a little bit about how that went? It was the first time that Georgia had won the SEC East. To do that there in Jordan-Hare Stadium is a pretty big deal. It sounds like a halftime speech from you was a big part of that. Would you mind recounting some of that for us?
Sure. Well, let me set the stage a little bit more because this was an opportunity. This was our last opportunity. We had a great senior class, Terrence being a part of it, Boss Bailey, Tony Gilbert, George Foster. We had some guys that had invested, some second generation, some younger generation Georgia guys that had spent the last 4 or 5 years pouring some blood, sweat, and tears, like so many others do. But we felt like this was a unique opportunity. We had some young guys that were very talented, that had bought into the program and into the system. And here was our chance. I mean, we felt like this was not only a national championship team, or not even an SEC championship game, but a national championship team. And this was our opportunity to break through a glass ceiling. We talked about it all year long. There was a ceiling that was preventing us from reaching our goals. And after the first half, we're seeing this opportunity that we've all worked so hard for slip through our fingers. And as an older guy who understands the talent in the room that he's in, and knowing that we hadn't come close to playing the football that had gotten us to this point and to this opportunity, you just don't want it to slip by. You don't want it to, you look back with any regrets. And one of the things that we as a group always said was, don't let it be you. Don't let you be the guy to let your teammates down. And so I felt like there was an opportunity. I'm not a big rah-rah guy. I wasn't a guy who gave a lot of speeches. That just wasn't my leadership role. And I felt like as we're going into that halftime, we kind of needed a little bit of a wake-up call. So I got up in one of the lockers, and I'm, telling us to look at the man next to you, look him in the eyes, and know that right now the way you're playing is letting him down. That the way we're going out there, the way we've just played for the past 2 quarters isn't good enough. And you owe that person next to you, you owe him more. And I think we're just trying to tap into the fact that when you're a part of a special team, it's a family. And I'm fairly certain that Boss Bailey was doing having a very similar type moment for the defense once we broke apart and kind of reiterated some of the same sentiments that we can't let each other down. We've come too far. We've got too great of an opportunity to let it go. And it just so happens that, I was the guy, but I'm sure there was a number of other leaders on that team that would have and could have stepped into that position. And that game's near and dear to my heart, BA, because I don't know if you know this or not, but before Michael Johnson scored his touchdown, David Green, who happened to be my roommate at the time, recognized that I was playing left tackle. I was open, so he fumbled the ball into the end zone for me to score. So I was able to jump on it, land on it, score a touchdown, have a great moment in and of itself. It's the only touchdown I've ever scored in collegiate football. So
there you go. A good collection of memories for Georgia against Auburn there that day, and a great way to wrap it up here today on our Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by the Classic City Lager. We like to have fun on this show, and no better way to have fun than looking back on some of the great wins for Georgia and Auburn, and looking ahead to what we hope is another great chapter in that rivalry this Saturday with another victory in the rivalry known as the Deep South's oldest. John, thanks for being here on the Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by the Classic City Lager. Classic City Lager, hope you enjoyed the game this weekend, and we'll certainly look forward to speaking to you soon.
I hope we all enjoy the game this Saturday. Go Dogs.
And for all of our audience, thank you for being with us here there as well. Don't forget, Classic City Lager goes great with football this weekend and great with this beautiful fall weather too. Pick it up, whichever retailer you frequent, 6 and 12-pack cans. It's available all year long from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing. It's Classic City Lager. Make sure you check that out today. And we'll see you back here again next Thursday at this same time for Dog Nation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. Have a great weekend, everybody.